If you travel to Marilla Park in Morgantown, West Virginia, and you are near Decker's Creek, take time to read a small metal plaque near the pedestrian bridge. You will note that it is named the Good Bridge. Not a good bridge in the sense of architecture or construction, although it may, but named for Dr. Gregory Good. This plaque honors Good, who spent nearly a quarter of a century as a history professor at West Virginia University and is currently director of the American Institute of Physics Center for the History of Physics in College Park, Maryland. It recognizes him for his advocacy of urban green spaces and walking trails in the Morgantown area. Teaching, research, in particular the history of geophysics and his work with the Green Space Coalition in West Virginia are characteristic of this Latrobe native who exemplifies the values of the St. Vincent College, Catholic, Benedictine, and liberal arts education. When he received the Mary C. Rabbit History of Geology Award in 2008, Dr. Good remarked that his first love was astronomy. He bought telescopes, built an observatory, lectured to school children at planetariums. All of this led him to become a physics major at St. Vincent. Dr. Good was nurtured and encouraged by members of this department, but he also fondly recalls the influences of his German, history, philosophy teachers. Good liberal arts education prepared him for an unforeseen career. As he was applying for graduate school in 1974, he discovered a new option, history of science. Quote, "When I was filling out applications to graduate schools for astronomy, I noticed that 3 had programs in the history of science. 2 seconds with an eraser changed my future." After he earned a Ph.D. in history and philosophy of science from the University of Toronto in 1982, Good began his academic vocation as an author, educator, historian of science at West Virginia University, and in 2009 became the director of the American Institute of Physics Center for the History of Physics. The mission of the center is to preserve and make known the history of modern physics and allied fields through education programs and by assisting scholars in their research. Greg Good's academic background and love of liberal arts and science, which began at St. Vincent College, continues and will continue to guide and inspire him. For a life dedicated to scholarship, teaching, mentoring of students, and concern for the environment, St. Vincent College is proud to present this degree, Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa, to you, Gregory A. Good, this 23rd day of April, 2014.
Thank you all very much. This is indeed a great honor. I didn't anticipate anything like this. It was 40 years ago that I was sitting in your place, except we didn't do this quite so well back then. We were a smaller, tighter community in a way at that point. We knew everybody who was on campus. Maybe you still do. I don't know. Yeah. I'm losing all my notes. So a virtue of an address like this is that it be short. This will be fairly short. Should be slightly humorous. maybe. We'll see if that comes true. And maybe there will be a good point or two to take from it. I hope so. Now, I have here a photograph of all the honorees of 1974. And as you can tell, we're paying a lot of attention across the entire spectrum now, a little bit more in depth than we did back then. We were a small group of 5 or 6 people. So, let's see. The title of the talk is A Life Built on the Liberal Arts, and it will be a little bit autobiographical, and I'll try not to repeat too much of what Brother Norman has said. When I was in my teens, I was intensely interested in astronomy, photography, jazz trombone. I came to St. Vincent, kept all of those things going simultaneously, although at the end of my freshman year, I realized that I really couldn't sign that recording contract that actually had come along, because it would completely throw me off the academic path that I was beginning to see a little bit more clearly for myself at that time. And I actually left the group and left them to go their own way. They never became famous either, but that's okay. They had a good time playing jazz rock for a while. Now, I kept the wedding photography going to help pay my way through. I read pretty broadly. I remember being a little shocked the first time I met with my department chairman as a freshman. This would have been late August of 1970. And he sat me down and he said, "Here are your next 4 years, 8 semesters. In each of these semesters, you have 1, maybe 2 choices that you can make. But they must come from this menu of distribution requirements," right? You probably still face distribution requirements of some kind here. It's certainly true that when you come to a liberal arts school that asks you, tells you that you will be taking X number of history classes, X number of philosophy, you're going to be exposed to a broad range of topics. But that's liberal arts in a pretty predictable, kind of almost a bureaucratic way, right? We'll put you out there and maybe you'll learn something about philosophy. Well, what I found out was that liberal arts was a lot broader than that. It was my physics and astronomy professors who taught me more about teaching than I had anticipated I was going to learn from them. My astronomy prof, sitting here, Michael Gaynor. I get emotional. Hope you don't mind. He threw me into the planetarium when I was a freshman and said, "A bunch of 8-year-olds are going to come along here, a bunch of 13-year-olds, a bunch of 16-year-olds, and teach them about astronomy." So I learned, I learned fast. The rest of my teaching career was pretty much like that, being thrown into situations that were new and unanticipated. One of the things that I think I took out of the liberal arts education that I got here was that confidence that if I looked at the assignment, really thought about what it meant, and then just went out and did it, that everything would be okay. And I remember in my first lectures as a first-year professor going in and telling the students, "I don't know anything about the history of biology, but we're going to learn a lot about it this year together." And I don't know a lot about history of biology to this day, except what I learned through teaching. But it was professors in other places at St. Vincent that taught me other surprising things. Frau Schlesak in German definitely taught me discipline in spades, If you didn't do all of that background vocabulary work, you would be shamed. It's a powerful motivator not to be shamed. From Dr. Zombach, in chemistry, I learned that there's more to learning science than just memorizing formulas. That you learn the science by doing experiments, by thinking hard about alternate approaches. And he introduced all of us. This was intro, right? Chemistry 101. The first thing we read was Mortimer J. Adler's How to Read a Book. And if you haven't read it, I think that it is a wonderful embodiment of the possibilities of liberal arts education. In particular, read the preface or introduction to the book. And in that, he wrote the book in 1938. You find out that behind this intensely scholarly person was one who was very concerned about the world that he lived in. The introduction, without ever saying the word Nazi or naming Hitler, lets you know right away that in 1938, he thought that threat of, as he saw it, the end of civilization was the strongest reason that people should take their scholarly work seriously and carry it out into the world. Well, many other professors showed me as well that there are aspects of knowledge, there are aspects of inquiry that cross all disciplines. And that's an important thing to remember, that when you look at a historical problem or when you look at a problem in physics, it's actually not so different the way you try to tackle it, the way you break it down, the way you look for keys and inspiration to possible solutions. So there are these things across all disciplines, and we need to bear that in mind and cultivate that. Whatever your major is, don't neglect the other subjects. Of course, you master specialized knowledge in your field. Of course, you master special techniques and skills, no matter what your field is, and those will stay with you for the rest of your life. But it's also important to know that there's a lot more than just what you built up in your own area of specialty. Now, this is a little reminiscent now of what Professor Snyder just said, what I want to say to you at this point. Especially across the non-professional disciplines. So we'll leave aside a few areas where people really do know what they're going to be doing next year. Think about the English majors, but also the physics majors and the history majors, all of those non-professional fields. How many of you in those fields imagine yourself as a professor someday at a university or a college? Well, I have one really discouraging thing to say to you. Across all of the disciplines, roughly 5% of people who get Ph.D.s actually become professors in that area. That means 95% do something else. Now, sometimes your uncle or aunt or father or mother or somebody else is going to say to you, that's terrible, right? 5% get to do what they were aiming at. 95% do something else. I see it in a very different way. I see it in a mirror. 95% were so well trained in physics or history that they saw how that could help them do almost anything else. As the skills that you take out of those disciplines, the toolbox that you gather up, even though there are some specialized things there, they actually are applicable in many other parts of life as well, and to many other kinds of assignments. So I think that going out with the knowledge that you've got skills, that you also, and this is something that I learned here, that I learned how to learn. I learned how to take a problem in something else that I had never thought of before, and by talking to the right people, doing the right background reading. I could build up the skills that I needed. I could find that way to build a bridge between what I had studied and what I had not yet studied. And I think that's not just true of the person who stands up here in an honored position like this. It's true of so many other people that you come in contact with in life every day. Start asking people what their majors were 30 years ago. I think you'll be shocked at the business executives who had English degrees, and you'll be shocked at the presidents of this or that who had a degree in physics. I know many, many physicists, and most of the physicists I know are successful in things that are really quite far from physics in some cases. So know that the background that you've developed is useful in other places, and don't despair at that 5% figure. It should not be frightening. It should be a challenge. What else can you imagine as a possible life 40 years from today? Where might you be? Well, so something else, though, that St. Vincent taught me that goes beyond scholarship was the importance of community and the importance of tolerance. I grew up in a small, I think we would now call it a fundamentalist Protestant church here in Latrobe, and it was a good religious upbringing. It taught me a lot. But when I came here, I got to know people from minorities, like Catholics. I had never known many Catholics before. So my life, like most young people's lives at that time at least, really was centered around the little church that I was raised in. So there were members of our church who lived on this side, members of our church who lived on that side. I didn't get to know many people from different backgrounds. But I got to know a lot of Catholics here. I also got to know a number of Jews, a number of Muslims, a couple of Buddhists, one of whom was from Thailand. So he was raised in a particular Buddhist tradition. I got to know Israelis, Palestinians, Thais, Iraqis. I met my first, in those days, not very open homosexuals here at St. Vincent College. And we had serious discussions with each other about all kinds of issues, religious issues, social choice issues, all kinds of things. And we did things together. And I think that community that you have, that you've built here, not just the people that you will soon think of as fellow alumni, but you'll think of them as who they are, where they came from. You'll never forget the different backgrounds that they had. And I think for the future of certainly the American community, it's important that we know how to talk to each other, that we know how to listen to each other, that we know how to take into account views that we may disagree pretty strongly with at times, and give the people of those different voices a chance to be heard. Take them seriously, and they, in return, should take you seriously as well. Well, the rest of my life, I don't have as many years to look forward to as all of you do in here. But my life from this point on is going to look a lot like it has up to this time. There's my work. I'm trying to get a couple of big projects done. I'm writing a couple of books right now. Well, I'll stay on that. That's what I did when I was in physics. I kept churning out those lab reports, right? And I'll keep that work going. I'll keep my service going, too. It goes in different directions now. I'm not building trails and bridges at the moment. I'm not serving on city council, thank goodness, anymore. One of the most challenging things I ever had the inspiration to do with my life. And I'll stay involved with community. And I wish that all of you will do the same. So These are words that probably are copyrighted, but I'll use them anyways. Be well, do good work, and keep in touch. Thank you.